Let's get corrupted. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Guys, it's episode number 60. I always love when we hit the next 10 milestone on episodes. It just shows progress and, keeping this podcast going. So I'm always excited. But you guys are in for a treat tonight. It's Clint's three-peat on Colubrid Corruption. It's his third time here, and I figured I'd have him on to kind of discuss a topic that's, I'd say, more so taboo in the Colubrid circles than maybe in some other segments of the industry. But we really want to discuss tonight where we think the reptile market's at, what we think the future is going to be, just general things like doing reptiles as a business and stuff like that. And I thought Clint was the perfect representative to give that perspective. So yeah, we're going to get right into that real soon. Just going to get through this intro stuff. But guys, if it's your first time listening to the show, make sure you're hitting a like on today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Show your support. We're getting close to 1,100. That's awesome. 1,100 subs. So help us get there. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. You could also listen to the show on all the major audio podcasting platforms like Apple, Spotify, everything like that. If you are listening on there, make sure you give us a 5-star review and write a little something. Helps the podcast out, gets the algorithm out there to other people. So definitely helps out. Make sure you go do that. Guys, all of my social media is down here below. It's pretty much at Meteoric Serpents everywhere that you can search. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Morph Market, all the good stuff. Make sure you're following us everywhere. That's the best way to stay up to date with what's going on here in the collection and with the show. And with that said, if you want to get a little more behind the scenes of what's going on here, a little bit early access compared to what the general public gets, feel free to check out the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. That's the first link in the description below. Besides all of that I just mentioned, there's other perks that are included, which is super cool. Go check it out. And a Discord group chat, which I think is really fun. A lot of guys who are just stoked about Colubrid. So really, really cool. Consider joining that. And guys, make sure you support USARK Florida. Those are the organizations that fight for our rights to keep our reptiles. Wherever you're living, anything could happen legislatively in your backyard. So make sure you're fighting the good fight. The cheapest memberships to USARK are extremely cheap. Make sure you're supporting those organizations. And let's see, I do have the hashtag Colubrid Corruption of the Week. Now, we did have a pre-recorded episode last week with Dan. Thank you guys for the support on that episode, by the way. That episode was the second best ever. Actually, number one is actually Clint's first episode on here. So just in terms of how many people watched and all that good stuff, I look at the numbers, I got to look at it, but that episode did amazing. So thank you guys for watching. But let's see. Share screen. They changed how that looked a little bit. My bad, guys. I got to give a shout out to Chaz at More Than Morelia. Because I don't think we discussed this since he was on the show, but he had a Jansenite clutch, 5 really good looking eggs. We were talking about it on the show, on the episode with him. He knew that girl was going to go. He was sending me pictures ahead of time. I was like, yeah, dude, that girl looks gravid. And sure enough, she finally dropped. What was this? About a week and a half ago or something like that. But 5 really good looking eggs. I mean, Jansenite, we talked about it on that episode, but it's just a species that really U.S. captive breeding hasn't gone down yet. To my knowledge, there's like one other guy producing them, and Chaz has these eggs on the ground. So I hope for his sake they go the distance and hatch out for him, because that's super cool and that's super, advancing for the colubrid hobby and Asian rat snakes and all that stuff in general. So yeah, big props to him. And again, guys, if you want to be featured Once a week, I do the hashtag Colubrid corruption. You get a little shout out, all that good stuff. So on your Colubrid pictures, you just put hashtag Colubrid corruption, and you're automatically in the running to get selected. But yeah. And then let's say quickly what's up to the chat. Reptiles and Oddities. What's up, man? Thanks for being here. We got Keller. What is up? We got Mike from Solid Serpents. Wicked was a good movie. I'm glad you think so. My girlfriend wanted me to watch it, and I refused. We got Adam from Patreon. Adam from Ivory Colubrid Co. Thanks for being here, my dude. We got John Lasseter, former guest of the show as well. Clint's double dipping in the chat as well. And we got Mason from the Patreon as well. Thank you, Mason, for being here, and thanks for your support. One other thing I did want to throw out there that I've never really said publicly, but if anyone is ever looking to sponsor Colubrid Corruption, whether you're an individual breeder, whether you're from a company of some sort, whatever it is, always feel free to inquire. I'd be happy to take on sponsors, help promote people, and yeah, all that good stuff. I've never really said that out loud, but if anyone ever wants to, feel free to inquire, and we can just have that conversation. But without further ado, let's bring our guest on for tonight. And once again, we have Clint from Metazotics. What's up, Clint? How are you?
Hey, buddy. I'm doing well, my man. How you doing?
Pretty good. So I kind of prefaced before what we wanted to discuss tonight. And, Clint's been on the show. It's the third time now. So if you don't know Clint's background, go listen to CCR, go listen to my episode with him. You should know who Clint is if you like colubrids. So yeah, go do all that. We don't need introductions, really. What I do want to know, because the last episode was like a pre-Colubridfest thing with you and Zach.
Mm-hmm.
And then your first episode was probably coming up on 11 months now. Last time I checked, it was like 10 months. So it's about 11 months now. But we're in the thick of it of colubrid breeding season. I kind of just want to know what's gone on in the last year, like what's going on currently with the breeding season, what's Metazotics got cooking?
Whew. Everything, man. I'll tell you, sometimes it's funny because we put them down, in brumation, and I think, okay, I got a few months before I really got to, worry about this again. And then it's almost like I go home, I go to bed, I come back the next day, and we're waking them up. I mean, that's what it feels like sometimes. And so it's, this mad dash I go through every room again, because we have this large spreadsheet that has all the animals, on it. And I go through and I'm like, okay, what do we have that is now ready to breed? And it may be the right age, but I have to, get eyes on everything to say, yes, it looks up to size. We're good. And mark that. And then there's also inevitably, when you've got 700 breeders back there, there's some that it's like, you're not looking as good as what you did last year. You're skinny, or you're getting old, or there's something. Okay, let's take this one out of rotation. This one's not going to hit. And so I go through and I have to update that, and then break it down into species, break it down males to females. And then it's this big kind of puzzle, where I'm putting all these pieces together. So we do that. And then every room has its own Excel spreadsheet of here's what's in this room. Here's what's getting paired to what. I really tried hard this year to shrink the number of females to a male. So I've got maybe 4 males total that have 3 females.
Oh, okay.
I've got a few dozen that have 2, but most are a 1-to-1 ratio running this season. Gotcha. And what that's going to do for us is I think it's going to increase our production, but 2, it's a lot less complicated, honestly, where our typical system is put a pair together on Fridays, on Mondays. So I'll do that on Friday. on Mondays, Steve separates everything, feeds through the week. Well, we're trying something different this year. And we're doing it for two reasons. One, because of how busy we are, I feel that I'm more likely to not get everything paired that I'm supposed to in a timely manner. And I'm afraid we're going to miss out. But also, on CCR, I'm sure you've heard us talk many times about cohabbing and how
Yeah.
many species and how many breeders we're hearing that are doing that. So what I'm doing with a lot of species this year is, if I don't think that somebody's going to eat somebody else, and it's not a male that's running through multiple females, we're keeping a lot of our pairs together. We're just letting them go through the season together.
Yep.
And it certainly takes a lot of, it's funny, I say it takes a lot of time off, but it still takes 3 hours on a Friday at least for me to go through and pair everything that's separated. So we're doing that. And I mean, I'd love to say I've seen this lock and this lock and this lock. No, I put it together and I'm out the room. I go.
Yeah.
So.
What's funny is, I mean, even with my small collection, is like, I see people post locks all the time, and I'm like, how much are you checking your tubs? Because in the last like 3 years, like, and granted, I haven't bred a whole lot, so my sample size is small, but like, I haven't seen a Texas rat lock in years. Last time I did was when I lived in Queens. But I don't know. Even the same with the cockseye. Like, I'm very confident I have a gravid cockseye. I never saw a lock in this calendar year, or even leading up to 2025. But when I got them, I saw them lock, and I didn't get eggs back then. But now I see a very gravid girl. So yeah.
And I used to, I put them together, and 15 minutes later I'm peeking again, and 45 minutes later I'm peeking again. But it's kind of either they will or they won't, and if I see it, great. I'm still going to continue pairing until I can completely tell she's gravid. And I mean, there's some that we've seen the Taiwan beauties lock up, the Ridley eye, because they're in big cages we just walk in a room and there. Several of the balls, we catch them wrapped all the time. But right now, I know I've got a bunch of ball pythons that are gravid. But the coolest thing for me, one, I'm pretty sure I have, I think, one, if not two, Prasinum gravid,
Nice.
the green bush rats. But I'm pretty sure if they are, they're just now starting to develop it. So I'm going to field them again in another week or so to be sure. But I am like 95% confident that my Fernatum, my Rains rat female, just had her prelay shed.
Nice.
And I was talking to Kevin Pollock. Actually, we were messaging back and forth on my ride here. And I let him know that. And he said, awesome. It seems early for him. And I haven't even been able to reply to him yet. But because he said he hasn't even paired his. I cooled mine together. I brumated the pair together. We've, let them come up feeding in the same cage. I mean, and he's been courting her constantly. Even right now, she's in the middle of shed. And when I say in the middle, half her body is shed and he's on her. Like, I mean, it's just, he's all over still. So, but she's plump. So,
yeah, and what you were saying about, speaking of early, what he was saying, we were just talking a few minutes ago before this started. What I've seen with my Texas rats the last couple of years is, like, I get summer babies all the time. Every time I've bred them, they're always summer babies, and I'm just like, people are getting all rat snake eggs already, and like mine are always later. So I don't know what it is, but either way, I was saying beforehand, for anyone who's not in the loop, I'm a little unconfident with my Texas rats this year, but it could just be that, like, I'm going to get summer babies and they're just not quite here yet. So yeah.
I typically, the earliest I ever get eggs from anything is late March, early April. And it's typically the Prasinums, and then I'll get some Asians going, but normally my North Americans, it's more, they're laying in May, hatching out, late June, July. So,
yep. Cool.
Good. We're on par. I mean, things seem to be going well. I mean, as far as the breeding, there's a inevitably there's a couple times where I pair some Mexican Black Kings. I go back and check on them, and one of them looks beat to hell, and I'm like, oh, I bet you have some Hemis. And sure enough, it's two males, which
Oh
actually
boy.
worked out because that one male was supposed to be breeding 4 females because I lost my other male. So now it worked out. Okay, now I got 2.3. Hopefully he's,
Nice.
can take his licks and still take still breed, not have his feelings hurt too bad. But
There you go.
yeah, but all
There you
good.
go.
Moving right along.
Cool. One of the questions I was going to ask is, what are you probably most excited about? But is it those Frenatum?
Yeah, because I've never produced them, and I've had
Okay.
this female for years. I was looking for a male, found an adult male. We've got it worked out. So, and this is for anyone who's familiar, with the reins. You can have your. I hate to use the word basic with these guys because they're anything but what I
Yeah.
would consider your more natural would probably be the best word, more natural green, adult. And the male favors that. The female is turquoise, and she has been turquoise forever. So we're not talking hormonal.
Nice.
And it's got to be the line that I'm getting, from Kevin, because I've got some almost yearlings at this point. They're starting to turn, and they're resembling the mother, or I say the mother, they're resembling the female, which I got from him years back
Right.
as well. So, I'm really excited because, I mean, to me, yeah, we can make cool morphs, we can make thousands of babies, but when you're producing something you've never hatched before, a brand new
Oh yeah.
species, that gets me stoked. That means you're paying attention, and not just those. I've got Herman's tortoise eggs incubating right now.
Okay.
And so, I mean, we're pumped for that, because we've never
Yeah.
bred those. So, yeah, it's things like that really getting me excited for the year.
Yeah. Every time until you bring it up, I almost forget that you have all these other reptiles that you're keeping and breeding. Also, it's not just snakes.
Yeah, day geckos. Those were a new species for us to produce this year. We've got babies of those already.
Nice.
We've got some red-eye crocodile skinks that, I mean, basically, I've got a really nice bioactive enclosure is what I've got because I've seen them once since October. But we're hoping, that they'll produce in there as well. The green-killed lizards, they produce like crazy. We're sad, we're working through it, but we've got one of our premier bearded dragons out here, Lady Calypso. We're pretty sure she's egg bound, so we're working through some things with her to get them to pop out. But yeah, we've got a lot, and we kind of keep expanding. There's too much cool shit,
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah.
hard to say no.
Yeah. Well, that kind of transitions us perfectly to the next segment of you expanding and things like that. You recently opened the second location in it's Henderson, Kentucky.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So I kind of want to talk through that. And like we said, we wanted to talk about reptile market and business and things like that. How did you know that it was a feasible business decision to go ahead and open that second location? And I know it's not super far from Evansville, from what you said, but yeah, what led you to that decision to say this is a good idea to have this second location?
So I'm going to give a little background onto kind of what my initial thoughts and plans were for our growth. And then how this kind of fell into place and why we jumped on it. So in terms of adding additional locations, there were a few pieces that I had in mind. I had 4 locations that I wanted, which we would say are 4 cities, okay, that I wanted that are all relatively close. And at first thought, when you say relatively close, you would think, well, aren't they just going to cannibalize each other? And the only cannibalization that you would really have with the distance, and I'm talking like 30 to 45 minutes apart, okay, they could cannibalize off of large purchases, meaning big cages, things like that. But someone doesn't necessarily want to drive 30, 45 minutes to get their rats every week.
Oh yeah.
So they usually will end up, potentially paying a little more to go to that place that was a little closer, the PetSmart, whatever. So that was one mentality. Plus, what that does for us here in the Chandler location, this is a 9,000 square foot building. We've got a warehouse here. All of our breeders are housed here. The showroom is 3,200 square feet. And this is and will be our hub.
Yeah.
So everything comes here, and then we can disperse it to any additional locations that are within the right travel distance. So what that does is that opens us up to being able to open additional stores with a much smaller footprint. And that means with a smaller footprint, your monthly expenses are going to be lower from like we own this building, but these other locations will be leases more than likely. But your rent payment's going to be lower because it's a smaller footprint. Your utilities, the utilities at the second shop are less than half of what we're paying, over here. Your payroll is less because you're essentially paying to run the store, where in this building, you're paying, the payroll is paying to run the retail shop. The payroll is paying to cover all of the collection, meaning the individuals who are, keeping them taken care of. Payroll is covering the nursery. Payroll is covering the warehouse, the shipping, the receiving, everything. So all in, it's the satellite stores. That's what, we typically call them those. The satellite stores, they don't even have to do as much volume as what Chandler, the original, does, but can still be just as, if not more, profitable because of the lower expenses. Because it's kind of like if you've ever worked at a large company and you had a corporate office, Chandler's the corporate office with a retail store attached. And so that's kind of how that functions,
Got it. So there's not going to be any, like, I mean, maybe there will be, but I don't know. But like your current plan is that there's no collection animals at these satellite stores. There's no breeding going on. You're doing all of that there. Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
At scale, all of it stays here for now. However, being that, like, okay, for example, our second location is in Kentucky. In Indiana, you cannot work with normal bull snakes. Now, you can work, let me rephrase, you can work with them. You cannot sell a normal bull snake unless you have your breeder's permit. You have to have them pit tagged. So in short, you can sell morphs, you can't do normals. Okay. Right. Well, that's fine unless you're wanting to begin working on combos, because inevitably you're going to be making hets in the process. Yeah. And then it doesn't matter what genes they carry, it's what they express, right? That's how it is in Indiana. And I respect the laws, no problem, because honestly, those are a lot easier to deal with than what some other states have. So I'll take it. However, bull snakes are not native to Kentucky. So what I'm considering is, if we house all of our morphs, all of our bulls in Kentucky, I'll let Ox, who's my general manager over there and who was our nursery guy, so has all the experience with all these different species. Maybe we have small breeding collections, in that state that makes sense for us over there. And there's little nuances, like, for example, false water cobras are fine here in Indiana, no go in Kentucky. Can't have them over there. So there's little things like that we have to be cognizant of to make sure that we stay within the bounds. Because I've got great relationships with the DNR, really, from multiple states, and I want to keep it that way. So
it's tough, man. Like, sometimes, like, it's hard to know some of these laws unless you really look into it. Like, everyone who keeps species that might be hit or miss, like, you should definitely make sure you're aware of what laws that those respective species have.
Right.
I'm lucky because nothing I keep, to my knowledge, is like banned anywhere. I don't.
The only thing you could potentially run into issues with are your Texas in some states, because they wouldn't recognize them as, Lynn Henry, if I'm saying it right, It's it depends on what that state deems them classified as, because that's another, because technically Indiana doesn't have black rat snakes. We have gray rat snakes. Maybe it bounces back and forth so much that it's like, I don't even mess it. If it's going to walk the line, I'm not even interested in taking the chance. So, but to go back to your original questions. So that was always the mentality is, okay, I have 3 locations that, when I say locations, areas, I don't have like a building picked out, but these are the 3 areas I want to expand to. And the reason is because of what I call geographical barriers, mental geographical barriers. So I live in Evansville, Indiana, the east side of Evansville, Indiana. It takes me 15 minutes to drive from my house to the Chandler location. And what's funny is the Chandler location is only 6 minutes away from the busiest shopping street in Evansville, where everybody goes to shop. But if you live in Evansville, if someone says, let's go over to Chandler, all the way to Chandler, it's like it's so far away. And I'm like, you literally, it's closer than a lot of the other places in Evansville, seriously. But it's this mental barrier. Henderson, Kentucky's the same way. It takes me 15 minutes to get to the Chandler store from my house. It takes me 15 minutes to get to the Henderson store from my house.
Oh, it does. Okay, it is.
They're 30 minutes apart. However, I have to cross the bridge. And it's that the Ohio bridge, no one in Kentucky wants to cross it to go to Indiana if they can avoid it. Indiana doesn't want to cross it to go to Kentucky if they can avoid it. So basically, by having that store in Henderson, there's so many customers that just stop. They just don't go any further. So they either have nothing or very, very little to choose from down there, because they're either not wanting to cross the bridge to get their feeders, to get their supplies, or they're waiting for a show to come through their area, that kind of thing. So Henderson was definitely on my radar because of that mental geographical barrier. And there was an existing reptile store there. And we operate very differently because it was basically just the owner, who I'm friends with. We still have an ongoing business relationship. Super, super nice couple. They breed ball pythons. They don't work with anything else. And so the store was ball pythons and very, very little product, not much at all, with very reduced hours because they just didn't have the manpower to do it. But they are also the individuals who put on several of our regional shows. And so a lot of their attention and their weekends were spent doing these shows. So they contacted me and let me know that, they were kind of looking at putting their attention straight on the shows. Really, we were talking about the collection at first. And then I said, well, if you're wanting to move to the shows, I'm more interested in the building. I want the shop. And so I knew it would help them out. We worked through numbers. We were able to come up with an agreement. And what was funny was I fully anticipated opening a second shop in 2025, but I wanted to do it like October. I planned it to be much later in the year. But when this fell in the lap, it was okay, let's hustle and make this happen. And we wanted to do it rather quickly. One, because they wanted to be able to, do it quickly, but I wanted to open as early in March as possible, because as long as we could do that, we would be able to recoup a lot of our initial investment, because it was still tax season. And so it was still in kind of prime retail time. And we were able to pull that off. We opened March 1st. And it was wild. The floors didn't get done until 7 days before we were scheduled to have our grand opening. So we built that entire store in 7 days.
It looks really good, man. And I'm going to apologize because for whatever reason, my desktop version of Facebook Messenger just won't show all the images you sent me.
No problem.
So I wanted to show them, but I can't. But I saw like when you were showing off the video walkthrough, I think live that day.
Mhm.
It looked really nice, and just those pictures. So, yeah, definitely. If you guys, I think it should be on the Metazotics Facebook. If you find like the live videos that Clint did, and kind of go check out the walkthrough. But I mean, yeah, you guys put a lot of work into it and it turned out really nice looking. So
Yeah, we're pretty excited. You know, and it's funny because while I knew about the geographical barriers, right? Those mental, and I keep saying mental geographical barriers that
yeah,
existed. We were humbled when we first took over because before we opened in March, what we did was we closed the main section of that building down and just opened a little side door, side room once a week and would let people come in on Saturdays to get feeders. We didn't want them
right.
to go without for a month while we shut it down and remodeled.
Yep.
So, but I think we let some things go to our head because of how popular we are here in our area. You know, and then it's how popular we are in the you know, local area, how we get a lot of attention because of CCR. You know,
Yep.
obviously we get messages from across the country. And when we were first taking that shop over, 75% of the people that walked in that door didn't know who we were, hadn't heard of Metazotics, and we're literally 30 minutes from the
Yeah.
Metazotics shop. And so it was like, you know what? It's good that we, you know, we needed this reminder on one. It told me some things I needed to do differently with advertising. But it also reinforced what I was feeling on the locations, on how they would make sense, because it's people don't want to go past a certain point. This is their line. This is where they stop. And because of that, they hadn't heard of us. They didn't even know who we were, because there's
Yeah.
no reason for them to know about a reptile store in Indiana that was literally only 15 minutes further, you know? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's, you know, and it's worked out great. So far it's, that location is actually on an even busier road than our
Okay.
original. It's on Highway 41. I mean, we're talking thousands upon thousands of vehicles past it every day. And it's doing well so far since we opened. It's every week it has either met or surpassed my budgeted expectations for it. So,
Cool.
so
And
no
it's
complaints from
like,
me.
yeah, and it's animals plus like full range of supplies as well.
Everything, yes. So
Okay.
you walk in, and I mean, that's the thing about, you know, the shops. I want you to be able to get anything reptile related that you have seen before. It's You're going to get the best thermostats, heat panels, heat
Yeah.
tape. You know, so it's not just the heat pads that you're going to see hung up at PetSmart. No, you want heat tape? Sure. How long do you want it? We're gonna
Right.
assemble it for you right here. Uh, PVC cages, no problem. You're gonna have the nice ones, you know, not just the like ABS, you know, kind of. You're gonna have it all. You're gonna have the, what do you want? 4 foot, 6 foot, you know, 2 foot, all those. You want sliding glass? Got those too. So it's going to
Right.
be rack systems. You know, you're not going to find that going into a PetSmart.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever it is you're after, we've got it. All Exoterras. I mean,
Cool.
across the board.
Yeah, and this question is more so just like my curious brain, because I know you mentioned Ox is like the general manager over there.
Mhm.
So do you let him have like full reign? Like, is he working stuff with like the supplies, or is he relaying stuff to you and then you're kind of handling everything? Like, how is that relationship working? Because I know you're not present there
Right.
like you
Not all the
are at the
time.
Chandler
Right. Right.
location. Yeah.
Um, I bounce back and forth. You know, for the first few weeks, I was bouncing back and forth almost daily. Um, but we have, I mean, there's a lot of communication. There's some things that I don't want to call them automatic, but I can just see from my POS system. So a lot of the inventory I watch like that,
Okay.
but Ox will absolutely let me know, hey, I'm low on this. You know, can you And luckily, where he lives right now, I guess let me pause for a second, really give this guy some kudos, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, he made me do something I never thought I would do, and I've never done in my 20 plus years, in retail. Ox is 18 years old.
Yeah.
Ox is still in high school. Right.
Yeah.
However, he's on a program where he's able to, he's tested out of several classes. I mean, smart guy. His work ethic is incredible. Love this guy to death. He's an old soul. And with that in mind, there were pieces that we've told him, okay, while you're still in school, I mean, I say he's in school, but he's there an hour before the store opens every day, anyway.
Yeah.
But we're still working him through a bit of a management training program to ensure that he's got everything he needs. But it's where he lives now. He kind of can come past the Chandler store on his way to the Henderson store. So if there's something that, like, popped by the other day to grab 5 ball pythons, from the nursery to ensure that, he keeps it full. And myself, my wife, Wendy, will go back and forth a lot too. And if there's we try to do like a big shipment once a week, here's everything. But while we're still figuring out what their stock level should be on different things, if we run out of something, we just make it happen, and a lot of communication. So I'm usually the one deciding how much of something. If he's out, he'll notify me, but otherwise he's more of he receives the inventory that comes in and makes sure that it matches what was supposed to be arriving.
Got it. Cool. All right. Anything else you want to talk about regarding the locations, the stores, before we get into kind of like the main conversation of tonight?
Just since we are talking, market and business tonight, one of the, I'll put this out there.
Yeah.
Another reason that I want these locations within the same, what we'll call market, even though they're separated and, we have these geographical barriers, right? But it's still essentially the same market. It's something I learned years ago on how to make an individual location more profitable. And it's basically when you see a store that has multiple locations, I don't like to say close, but relatively. And you would think, and again, typically if you're, someone who's working at these stores and you find out, oh, they're going to open another one, just several miles away. And you're like, well, that's just going to cost us business, right? Because that business just going to go there. And it might cost you 15. It might cost you 15% of your business through cannibalization. But it's going to also cost 15% of their business, so it's going to pull from other pies. However, when you have a marketing spend, so let's say, because that's usually one of the biggest expenses that a company has is what they spend on marketing. Okay. So I'm just going to throw a number out there. Let's say that you're spending $5,000 a month on marketing. Okay. If I'm spending $5,000 a month, I'm not, but if I was, if I was spending $5,000 a month on marketing for this one store, then that's taking $5,000 off of my bottom line, right? But now that we have that shop over in Henderson, I'd still be doing the exact same number of marketing dollars. I would be running the same amount of ads. I have flyers that we pass out at
two
Reptile
locations.
Bingo. So now you just have 2 addresses, and now Chandler is only spending $2,500 on marketing. Henderson is spending $2,500 on marketing. So if you put 5 locations within an area where it still makes sense for you to put the addresses on the same flyer, you still spend $5,000, but now each is only $1,000 it's spending on marketing. So that's another reason why before we were to go to Michigan, as you know, I know I've been asked, I see Kevin is in the chat. So there's other areas where we've been requested, hey, come put a Metazotics here. Yeah. We want to capitalize on this market first to make these as profitable as possible. So then we have the base to be able to expand further if we go down that road.
Got it. Cool. All right. Yeah, so I wanted to get into this discussion tonight, and mainly because, like I was saying before, it's something that I feel like you don't see get talked about in colubrid circles. Also, just with the way the reptile economy, like separate from real life, I'll call it real life, I guess, but like reptile economy has just been weird the last couple years. We've seen prices like just like tank on certain animals and or certain species and things like that. But I kind of want to know where you think everything stands today and what we're looking towards the future. Yeah, kind of just as a baseline, like just where we're at as a market. And I feel like you have the best representation of this because of everything that you do, all the species you have, all the reptile shows you do, and all of that. So you probably have one of the best grasps on this for general reptile market.
I appreciate that. So it's not going away,
Yeah.
and that's one thing is you hear doom and gloom, at times, and I hate to say it, but it's really doom and gloom is going to happen in two specific markets right now, and that's going to be ball pythons and crested geckos. Those are the two that are going to struggle more than any other, and for a few reasons. And but it doesn't mean they're not selling, and that's one of the things I can't stress enough is these. Believe it or not, and I don't mean this as a shot towards anybody, I'm probably going to have to buy some ball pythons pretty soon because I literally have no more in my nursery. Yeah. All our ball pythons are now out on. I can't even take them to shows. We don't have any to take to shows because they're all out on the floor. My point is they are still selling. They aren't going to sell at a outdated and previously grasped to price point. And so that's one thing that's got to happen. Same thing with crested geckos. I can tell you, Steve, who works in our nursery, that guy has sold probably 45, 50 crested geckos in the past 5 weeks. But it's because he's not selling crested geckos. He's selling bioactive enclosures with a crested gecko, right. But he's getting more, full money out of it. So it's, getting creative, but it's the market. It's going to have its cycles. It's going to have its ups and downs. And everybody says that on every podcast and every, when we're talking about it, but it's just recognizing the things that don't necessarily cycle, that are always going to be popular, that are always going to hit, and adjusting the things that don't. And we can go into more detail with that and get a little more specific, but all in, understand that we call this a hobby a lot, right? Yeah. We call it a hobby. This is a passion, is what it truly is. There's a reason why we say they're addictive. Why we compare getting a snake to getting your first tattoo. You think you're going to stop with one, don't you? It's so when you look at it like that and you understand this isn't just something we like to go do every now and then. No, when it's a passion, it will always be there. There will always be a market for passion. So when it comes to reptiles, don't think that it's going away. We'll battle legislation, here and there. We'll hear the moans and the grunts and the groans, but I would never tell anyone don't get into it. There may be times I'll recommend that's not where I would dump a lot of money. If you're doing this as an investment and you're looking for a return on your investment, if you enjoy the animal, spend as much money as you want to on it. Have a blast. Absolutely. But don't go into it thinking you're going to make it big and be rich. It's not like that. It's, very few. And quite frankly, a lot of the individuals that we think are like that, they're not. It's some make it a persona because it helps sell animals if you want to be like them.
So yeah, so I want to stop you there and make a very important point to anyone watching, especially people who are newer into this, is like, I think part of what's happening is actually on a person to person level. Like, these are like individual person problems. Because what happens? There's someone who sees all this stuff with the reptiles, they get excited, they go buy 4 ARS Freedom Breeder racks and they fill them up with as many animals as they can. Then what happens? They're like, "Oh, hey, we decided we wanted to consolidate some of our projects." And granted, I did a little bit of the same thing, but not to that extreme degree. "Oh, we want to consolidate some of these projects. Now we're going to sell half of those animals." What do you think happened to the market of those animals? And then on another level, to that same person potentially going into debt to buy these animals is probably the stupidest personal financial decision you can make. And I am obsessed with personal finance. It's like that's another hobby of mine. I'm just like I'm really into that stuff and trying to be smart with money and things like that. It's like that is one of the silliest things you could do with this hobby, is just go into debt over reptiles, whether it's the actual animals themselves, whether it's equipment and all that stuff. Like, if you have the money that you can afford to spend, go ahead and spend it. But, you know, I see things and people are like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm debating buying this snake." It's like, if you have the money and you want the snake, go ahead and buy it. You have the money. If you want the snake, go ahead. But if you don't have the money, just don't spend it. And you shouldn't be spending it if you don't
Yeah.
have it.
To that same point, something I see, acquiring a big collection is not difficult, honestly.
Nope.
If you got the funds, you're going to do it. You're going to find deals at times. Acquiring a large collection is easy. And unfortunately, I've seen it happen many times where they'll have 60 breeders and they've never produced a clutch yet. So they'll grow to that fast. So acquiring the collection is easy. Breeding is easy. Incubating is easy. Hatching out the babies, easy. That's where it turns. Because then taking care of 60 adults, okay, you figured out how to do that. But now if you're taking care of 200 babies, were you prepared to house 200 babies? Were you prepared to feed 200 babies every week? And then the other part that so many people don't take into account, I'm sure you've heard me before, Joe, we'll crank out 1,000, 1,500. I mean, over the course of a year, man, the number of babies that will hatch in a year, it's insane. And we will sell them. But this has grown, although Metazotics wasn't created until 2022. Bartley Reptiles, prior to that, this is my 31st year breeding reptiles. So there's been this huge network I've been able to develop over 30 years that helped me have these outlets, where that's why, we are able to sell the number of snakes that we do, or number of reptiles that we do. But if I would have been this size even 15 years ago, I'd have been flooded. I'd have been flooded and burnt out. And I mean, so that's the thing to keep in mind, is if you want to grow your business, if you want to do this as a business, you are better off taking your time and investing a few years into it slowly, so that you can develop what you need to be able to have the network, to have the streamline and the channels to be able to actually be successful at moving the animals to new locations and to new homes. So
yeah. And like you were saying, like I've seen people on the ball python side of things literally amass 60, 70 snakes within their first 6 months of being in the hobby. And it's like some of them will buy adults, but it's like, you haven't bred an animal yet, and you have more animals than I do. You haven't bred a single thing. You haven't produced an animal, and you have more than I do. Uh, and not to say that like my collection should be seen as a baseline, but like I have a decent size, like, I have like 40 something snakes or whatever, but like, that's a lot. It's a lot. And it's all different
Mhm.
species too. But doing that, it's just silly. And people I think have this fallacy that they can just start up, do all that, and then be able to support what they're doing. And they don't take time to learn either. Cause like even something
Mhm.
that's as simple as ball pythons, like it's not like, yes, it's a little bit cut and dry, but not really, because in my opinion, the ball pythons are weird because you'll have these females that grow, and grow their follicles, and then they'll reabsorb. And then
Mhm.
you're like, what happened? Well, she reabsorbed. So now you're shit out of luck on that animal. There goes that pairing of you trying to
Mhm.
make your return back on all those animals you bought. So um not that I wanted to turn this into a rant, but like, I'm just trying to be educative to people listening who
Yes.
maybe want to get into this, and like just to think before you expand that far.
So to put it on the table, to anyone listening to this, I want you to understand where I stand on it. I want you in this. I want
Oh
you to
yeah.
want more animals. And it's here's why, because it's not just, oh, well, because maybe I'll sell you some. It's the more people who are into this, the more people who are passionate, loving it, growing it. If you are passionate, you are going to create that passion in someone else. And so it's exponential growth is what happens when someone is in this and in this long term and in this with the right mentality and the right and the right mindset on it. So I do not want to deter anyone from enjoying this, whether it's a hobby or as a passion or as a business or as a side business. That's how, a lot of us have
Yep.
done it. And I want to encourage that and I want to help. And so, what I said there just now about going a little slower, that's not to throttle you down. That's not to try to talk you out of this. It's because you are more likely to stay with it and in it if you slow grow yourself and your business in this than if you hit it hot and heavy and burn out. Because I'll tell you what's going to happen. You're going to get it within 3 years. I'm the guy who's coming in and buying your collection for pennies on the dollar. That's what happens. And I'd rather
And
not be the guy doing that.
yeah, and growing slower will make you, one, learn patience, two, you'll actually learn from your animals. I think you'll do more observation, and three, you just don't get, you don't get overwhelmed when
Yeah.
everything's up and breeding and stuff. And it allows you to make the judgment call of, hey, can I do this? Can I expand this?
Mhm.
It teaches you all those things. So uh
And
yeah.
even taking it out of the business realm, the more people who are working with these animals, it's one, if oh, God forbid, I had what just happened, in Bob Clark's facility. If that happened here and, we had a fire, let's say, lost to everything, I want as many people out there working with those with the greenbush rat snakes, with the Rains rat snakes, with these various black rat morphs, because if more people aren't, where would I ever acquire them again? So
Yep.
I want those out in the hands of as many people as possible. Plus, I may have been doing this for 30 years, but Joe, you could come along, get a snake that I've been working with forever, and in 6 months figure something out that I never saw. And
Yeah.
so, you know what I mean? That's why I want as many people doing this as possible, because it just grows everything, whether it's the business side, whether it's the understanding of their behaviors, whether it's keeping the um, population secure in, captive collections, all of it. So it all goes hand in hand. And that's why I want to make sure to give that advice is just go slow. You got plenty of time. It's not a race.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So now that that part of the rant is kind of over, but I hope anyone who's listening like really, really thinks deeply about that. And I think I've talked a little bit about that before on a solo episode. I'm not sure, but if I haven't, there it is. Please, like, think, be smart before you make these kind of decisions to expand like crazy. But that said, if you like the snake, if you have the money, if you have the space, if you have the time, go for it. I'll never discourage you from buying something. I do want to make
100%.
that clear. Yeah. All right. So now let's kind of be specific about colubrids. Um, I know you kind of talk about like the market trends a lot on CCR and what's going
Mhm.
on, what's selling and all of that. But what do you see looking towards the future? Because we know corn snakes and hognose are the two hottest things in terms of colubrids right now.
Mhm.
Um, just even from your business and what you're selling, is there another species perhaps that you're seeing maybe start to trickle up on the rise at all?
There's several. I get asked what's going to be the next big thing a lot.
And
That,
that's
that
and that's
question,
hard to say. Yeah.
yeah. Well, in all fairness, we have to accept there's only really been like maybe three big things and then two honorable mentions. It's I no, let me rephrase. I would say there's been four big things and two honorable mentions. The first was corn snakes, hands down. That was the biggest for
Oh yeah.
ages, the most popular pet snake ever. And we could start talking boas in there, but they're popular now. But as far as big things, the corn snake was the first one. Now in the late 80s, and into a little bit of the early 90s, an honorable mention would actually be Burmese pythons. They had,
Yeah.
a rise there for a while, but then, and I think it was, yeah, we had a lot of morphs starting to hit, but it was kind of a status symbol to have this big old snake, and
Yeah.
and that it didn't last long, and so it wasn't necessarily a big thing, but it certainly should be mentioned because it had a popularity surge for a bit. Um, then you had the ball pythons started, and early in the ball python takeoff, and that really happened when I want to say it's probably the spider gene, I believe, is what really catapulted ball pythons, because you had albinos and I think pieds were already out, so you started having some morphs. But the moment an incomplete dominant hit, and it was, oh, how fast you could reproduce these, and
Right.
the price, it just skyrocketed. And nothing's ever touched ball pythons. We all know
Yep.
that, and so
Yep.
there's, that became the pinnacle. Um, and early in the ball pythons, the cresties started. And cresties, I will also say, big. That's not an honorable mention. They count as a big.
Yeah.
So you've got the corns, the balls, the cresties. Another honorable mention that I would say is leopards.
Oh
Leopard
yeah.
geckos started to kick off with some high popularity there as well. And then now hognose. Hognose would be a big at this point. I mean, when they make up 40% of the colubrid market,
Yeah.
it's a
I
big.
would I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Um, so, and that's even more impressive now than when corn snakes were big, because when corn snakes were big, there wasn't nearly the variety of animals available,
Right. Right.
in the market, let alone the ease of access. You weren't going online and with a few clicks, they're, shipped to your house. Where for hognose to be as dominant and as popular as they are in the colubrid market in this day and age, that says something, about it. So,
Yeah.
so those are your bigs, and it's going to be hard pressed for us to really experience another big anytime soon. Um, Instead, I don't necessarily look at just an animal and think, is this going to take off? I look at the mentality of the population. And when I say mentality, just the nature and human behavior will usually dictate and tell me what's going to be exciting for people and what's not. Um, One of the jokes that I get kind of thrown at me all the time is, brown snakes, because I'm like, it's not like I can appreciate it. We talk about my conversation with Matt Most years ago on David's Rats, David I.
Yeah.
He was working with them. And he's like, you should really get into these. These are really cool. And I go, I agree with you. They are really cool, but they're brown. And the problem is on an animal like that, to invest the price tag that they were coming with at that time, once you sell them to the 6 people that want them, that's the market. It's not going to really take off. So what I am finding personally, we always talk about bright colors are going to move, things like that. I am finding the smartest investments at the moment are not necessarily morph related. If hognose, if you're going to get into them, go for it, do your research. Personally, I'm not jumping into hognose because I'm too far behind in that market. In order for me to really feel that, to make the kind of splash that I like to whenever I'm doing a species, I would really have to invest heavy to get ahead of the game, to get to where I felt
those
okay.
hognose prices. Heavy is heavy.
Yeah. And I'm not interested in doing that, because instead I feel that if you go into species that have the right look, which the easiest test for the right look is if someone didn't know snakes, would they think it's pretty? That's first test right there. If they have the right look, if they have a certain ease of care, especially if it's funny, because it's going to sound like I'm talking out of both ends of my mouth here. If they have an ease of care that is accompanied by a certain level of difficulty for reproduction and baby takeoff, because those things limit how big, how many are in the market.
Right.
But if they're, as long as they're easy to take care of, if they're in the market, they still, will go to another home pretty easily. For me right now, gray band kings are fire for me. Now, specifically locality gray bands, because that is a species that people really want to know. They want to know the freaking rock they were under on the road, so it's as tight as you can make that locality. They're all about it. And that one fits a lot of those molds because they are super easy to take care of. They're easy to breed. They're easy to hatch out, but getting those little freaking worms to eat can be difficult if you don't have the things you need. And so they, that's one that they're going to hold their price. And again, I'm gobbling up as many of those as I can find because I want to keep building my collection and have as many localities as I can, because they do so well. And I think I've got the right pieces here at the shop for Corey, who now runs our nursery, to be able to get these little guys to eat, when they hatch. So that's a species I would certainly recommend. I will tell you, you've got the look, I mentioned those other pieces, but you also, the price point tends to make a big difference. If you start going below 150, animals that are typically below 150, there's not as strong of a market. Eventually you'll sell them, but it's just not as strong. And I think that's the mentality of people that think, it's not cool enough. It's not special enough for me to, want to get it. Or there's sometimes like, you'll blow out price. It's usually ball pythons I see this on. And again, I don't mean that negative towards anybody, but if I put a $40 ball python out, it's going to sell. I'm not always comfortable with the life that ball python's probably going to have with, who picked it up just because it was $40. But if you're typically kind of over that 150, maybe even over 200 price point, and you are at $600 or less, so right in there, that seems to be a sweet, sweet spot for colubrid keepers. Because if it's over 600, it's probably delicate. You're probably taking a gamble on whether or not it's even going to live. And you now are starting to get into rent payments. You know what I mean? It's, I could get this snake or I could pay my mortgage, but that kind of that 150, 200 to 600 range, you feel like, okay, I'm getting something that not everybody has. So it's different enough, looks cool
Yeah.
enough, and it has you excited on it. So um, it works, in that range. But to go back to, if I want to give some species specifics as far as, and again, take this like you would take stock advice. Okay. It's you're
Yeah,
gambling at your own risk.
that's
Yeah.
not what I was looking for. I kind of
Yeah.
just want to get your opinion, especially based on, you know, again, what's going on in your shop, what are you
Yeah.
seeing at shows and things like that.
So what I see is it's not necessarily that there's going to be a big thing. There's a mentality on, is it just a little different? Is it something people are really wanting the things they don't see all the time? It doesn't have to be the complete oddball, what is this? I've never seen this before. But usually those things that you see them online and then you finally see them at the show, that it's that kind of rarity really, really sits well with people.
Right.
Um, and the shop versus the stores, I'm sorry, the shop versus the shows versus online, those are three different beasts completely.
Oh
What
yeah.
sells in the shop, I typically don't even pack up to take to shows because that's not the same thing. And then you have regional shows versus national shows, what sells at those, and then online. But I think that we will continue to see things, like I said, the gray bands are going to continue to do well for a while. I think that newer Asian species are going to continue to do well, meaning, there's several that are here that are already staples and they've got their line. I mean, mandarins
Yeah.
always just move along. Bamboos always just move along. Beauties
Well, I'm
always just
curious
move
to know
along.
what you mean by new,
Well,
or
new things
which
like, okay,
species you mean by.
Um, well, you know that I got those Patias Nigra marginatus.
Right. Yeah.
I got those specifically because they checked off a lot of boxes for me, and I freaking love the way they look.
Yeah.
It's green and black snake. It's funny because cartoons are always depicting snakes as green, but there are actually very few green snakes. So you got this green and black snake. It's got a price point that is going to keep people interested because it's going to keep it rare. I don't think they've been bred in the United States yet. They've been bred, in Europe. Um, so there's going to be more Asian species like that start making their way to, over here, that are become just as popular as the Asian species that are already here.
Yeah.
And that's without a morph. They're just naturally that gorgeous. So you'll get that. I'm not going to be surprised if we start to see more South American coming in. I think that it's going to be, you're dealing with some more rear fang, from
Right.
that area, but it comes in waves, and it's really, I mean, I could go on and on because as I'm sitting here thinking, there's other Montane Kings that continue to pop up. I'm seeing California Kings decline a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I
so
agree
those,
with you there. I think they're
yeah,
having a hard time
hmm
selling.
yeah, they definitely are. I mean, those are
And
typically some of the. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I bought myself a pair just because of how much I liked Cow Kings, and I'm just like, I scanned through Morph Market. I'm just like, these things aren't selling, and there's a lot of them, and a lot of
hmm
them that look fairly similar and at very low price points, like very affordable. I'm talking
Yeah,
50 to $150, like,
yeah, and they'd be great, like beginner snakes for individuals. The problem is, baby cow kings are little a-holes, and
oh
so
yeah,
it's hard to get a 6-year-old to want to hold this little thing that's striking and pooping all over them. Even though it's like, hey, in a year they're going to be awesome, But
yeah,
right now, that's
yeah,
just what they do. So those tend to slow down a little bit, but Hondurans, they continue to have. Those are some that even without new morphs, I mean, like Kayla's doing some fantastic things
Oh yeah.
with, those dark ones that with TSK line that she's working with. But that is a snake species that the morphs are absolutely beautiful, and they may have been around for a long time, but they're still going to. I just bought another adult male because I was short, an adult male, and but they're so dang pretty that they're always going to get attention and they're going to be
Yeah.
steady. So instead of looking, my advice would be instead of looking for big things, if you look for things that you enjoy that are going to be pretty to somebody said the grandma test. I love that. Quirky snakes. That was awesome. Yeah. The grandma, if it looks pretty to grandma, that's going to check off the box. And if you want to hit a price point where you're not going to see it flooded on everyone's table, but it's not going to be so high that people really just feel that, that's not a smart move. You work in that arena and you're going to be successful. I mean, it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah. Why do you think that? Actually, I don't know. It's probably a bad question, but I was going to ask, why do you think people haven't gravitated more? Now, I feel like we have been seeing more and more people breed some of the Asian species, but I feel like in comparison to like North American stuff, like it will never compare.
As
And
far
do you
as
think it's
numbers,
so? Yeah, just like, and how many people are producing and how many people are just, keeping them in general, because they do make very good pets. Um, I know some of them get bigger, but some of them stay on the smaller side. And, they're not hard per se to take care of at really much at all. But I just wonder why they haven't not overtake, but I feel like we will almost never see them close to levels that some of like, corns and hogs are.
I would say availability and mistakes are what's slowing that down. One, when I say about like new Asian species that need to come in, somebody's got to pay for that. It starts
Yeah.
there, and someone has to take that risk. Vitius nigromarginatus. That was
Yeah.
my risk for the year, as I'm going to spend a lot of money to get in 6 of these things and expect half of them to die, which happened. The pair I've got now is solid and running.
You're
So
down to a pair?
yes, and that's what I
Oh, okay.
expected.
Okay.
But again, they're eating fantastic, growing like weeds. So someone has to take that initial risk, whether that's wild caught or captive bred from somewhere overseas, pay the extra money to get them over here, and then actually breed them. And so
Yeah.
that's one hurdle that we run into is how many people are willing to take that gamble. Number two is when some do then get released into the hobby, people make mistakes with them. Bamboos, we should be absolutely flooded with bamboos by now,
And
but
we're
we
really
don't.
not.
No, we're not. We're still having them imported constantly, not wild caught. They're all going to be, European bred, but they're still being imported over here, every year at huge numbers because we want to take care of them like North American colubrids. We're giving them an 80, 82 degree hot spot when they don't want that. They don't like that. They end up,
Yeah.
they may survive for a while, but eventually they're going to crash or they're going to not produce or produce poorly. I mean, that's really what happens is I think we make, they like it humid. We get them too wet. So it's all this where we.
That was the first thing I learned when I got my first one. And it really sucks because that is a huge problem with them as well, is that I think there's just bad information online. And that's why, unfortunately not everyone's going to listen to a podcast like these as their first lesson into how to keep said species. But
Right.
I thought I needed to keep my cockseye wet. And I learned the hard way, not in a bad way. I just learned when it wouldn't eat for me. And then I was like, okay, something's wrong. And then I switched it up. I made it drier and just like sprayed it down instead of like, dumped water. And sure enough, thing ate. And it's, now I know that cocks are savages when you
Yeah.
keep them the right way. So,
Yeah.
it's just that's probably another big factor into why. And I've said the same thing about rhinos. I thought I couldn't keep rhinos forever. And then when I got them, I was like, oh, they're so easy, because they really
Yeah.
are. They're
Yeah.
so easy to take care of,
Yeah. I agree. And I mean, again, mistakes will be made along the way, and sometimes it's stupid. I haven't even shared this. I'll end up sharing it on the next CCR episode. So I currently have 2 paradise flying snakes loose here in the shop, because I was like, you know what? I'm going to try those. We're going to see what we can do. So we get them in, we put them in quarantine. And I set them in racks temporarily, because if they did have any external parasites, it's much easier to treat and actually have them, rid themselves of it, if treating in a rack system versus an arboreal. Because then we would move them to our arboreal as soon as I knew they were clean. Well, what I've now learned is, how they can flatten their bodies to glide? Yeah. So the slightest little gap and both of them have gotten out of the rack system. So, and it's things like that where, we just don't know enough. We're going to make mistakes. And so my point is, let's say I'd have gotten those from overseas to try this new species, and just that fast, I've screwed up. So that happens. And now, given bamboos don't have the longest lifespan compared to, a lot of like North American rats. I mean, if they're constantly breeding, every year, then 12 years that's a long time for bamboo, to be honest.
Okay.
In my experience, I've had some, longer than that, but you can tell they're an old snake after 12, just by looking at them. So, but that's why I think that a lot of the Asians that are here, because you tend to see the same people having success year after year, and not a whole lot of newcomers, having success with them. And I think that's what it is we try to follow the North American recipe that we've read all our lives. And that's just not the case. I mean, sometimes it's, the Prasinum, for example, they breed during the fall and brumation, and then lay early. If you don't know that, you're pairing them after the first shed, after brumation, and it's too late. At that point, they've already missed. So it's little things like that I think slow it down.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you foresee any of like the colubrid species that we see pretty often? You know how we talked about cow kings. Do you foresee any falling off like a cliff anytime soon in terms of popularity?
Cow kings are going to take their cycle, but they're going into it right now. It doesn't mean cow kings aren't going to sell. Doesn't mean I'm telling people don't buy cow king if you like it. No, they're there. They've got some excellent morphs that are still going to be popular. Things like platinums. The ghost is popular, although there's some kind of issues, I believe, with female ghost and their egg laying to a degree. Mine are problematic, but there's certainly going to be a market for it, just not as strong. They're not going to go as fast, and it's going to go at a lower price point for the most part. If anybody's listening and you're a cow king breeder, please don't hate me for saying that. I have to be honest when people are asking me these questions, because like I said, there's still going to be some that are doing just fine. And there's always going to be a market for a crisp black and white snake. It's stunning. People are always going to like that. So that one is probably going to take a little bit of a decline. I think I'm just kind of scanning through. You'll start seeing some of the low end corns, low end hogs will be a little tougher to move. Kind of compare those to, normal pastel Mojave ball pythons. It's going to be, that same kind of market. And that's just part of it. Just kind of running through my head now. I can tell you the ones that have struggled back and forth for me, but I was real heavy in just two morphs. Florida Kings.
Oh yeah.
I think that they spiked probably 3 or 4 years ago is when they were at their peak. They've declined, and I think they've hit probably kind of their flat line where, like personally, I'm probably going to like look at my pricing on those again. I think it may be time for me to make an adjustment. I mean, we've sold a lot, don't get me wrong, and they do okay, but I just feel that if there's a species I have listed on my website right now that I'm thinking, I may have these high, it's that one. It's Florida Kings. So they're still going to sell, but I think that they probably need to be listed a little differently, personally. Now, I've said on CCR as well, a one that is going to, in my mind, is the sleeper segment out there. It's garters for so many reasons.
Yeah.
One, there's so many different looks, variability, and morphs, out there with the different subspecies. They're really, really good looking. We continue to learn more and more about their social dynamic and behaviors, the fact they're self-aware, how intelligent these things are. I was just watching my son's Oregon red-sided garters from the Zirkles, watching them eat an hour before I came out here. And it's so impressive. They're just so neat. Watching their reaction to you the moment you walk in the room, and they know what's up. It's like dogs coming over to come get their food. But another piece, and it's not just how cool that species is, it's thinking about what else is happening in the hobby. And that is the shift in caging dynamic, where racks were all the rage 20 years ago. But now we're going into bioactive, naturalistic. It's how awesome can your enclosure be? That's as if not even more important to so many keepers now than what's even in it. And with that in mind, garters are like probably the perfect colubrid species for a naturalistic or bioactive setup, because they go perfect in it. You don't invest $500 into an enclosure for one snake. You can put 6 of them in there, and really have this community going on. They're active during the day. So there's just so much that I feel like that species really, in the next 5 years, you're going to see a big pickup, in those. I say that species, that segment, because that's going to cover many different, garters. But right now it encompasses less than 1% of the colubrid market. So even if it's up to 5% in 5 years, that's going to be a huge leap. I want to say I was just at Tinley, and two tables had garters. And we're not talking about a table full of garters either. They just happen to have garters on the table, Zirkles being one. So that's one that, if you're looking for a sleeper project, that's it right there, because they still are going to carry a $150 to $600 price tag, depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah. One that I think is a big sleeper, and you guys just had an episode about them a few weeks ago, the Phrynonax. I think those are on their way to the moon in the next few years. Now, do they have a higher barrier of entry in terms of what they need, their care, their attitude as babies, because mine are demons? Yes. But with that said, the variability, the colors is like, you can't beat this. And the colors mine are turning right now is so cool. And I'm so excited to keep seeing these colors change. But man, some of the best Phrynonax just look so damn good. And it's like no other.
Well, and that goes back to, like I mentioned, I think that South American species, it's funny, we know more about African and Asian species than we do South American. as far as what's there, you know, and I think that there will be more that we've not even looked at. You know, when I say we, is the hobby. You know, there's going to be people. I could say a dozen, you know, South American species, and Zach is going to be like, yeah. And I'll be like, I've never heard of these before until today, you know. So,
well, another one, speaking of South American, the Barons racers are exploding right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been, you know, and it's the only reason that I think that rhinos have gotten more attention than Barons previously are just because of the rear fang aspect of them. You know, that tends to people, and they're a little more flighty too. The Barons are.
Well, I think rhinos are just more common because I didn't know about Barons really until a lot more recently. I've known about rhinos for years. I didn't know about Barons until more recently. So
yeah, and that's fair.
I don't know.
You're right though. I mean, especially with the color phases that they have. So I want to say you got like your browns, your greens, your blues, you know, turquoise there.
Yeah.
And they definitely, yes, they're shooting off this past few years as well, and they're just going to continue to. And it's, again, you go back to why I don't call a Barons an oddball at this point. It's not. There's enough of them out there and available. They're not an oddball. They're, you know, the Egyptian false cobras, those are still oddballs. You know, you don't see those. Barons are not an oddball. Rhinos are not oddballs. You know, even the Faranacs are starting to get to where you can't really call those oddballs anymore. They're much more limited than what the Barons are. But they're out there.
The only thing about the Faranacs is just the people now have them. It's the amount of people that are breeding them, and that number is very small still, and it's limited to well, 4. I can name 4. And they're all people I've had on the show. So
let's say
and maybe there's a couple more.
4.
Yeah.
And Hood, that's Loman, Roy, and Kevin.
And Matt.
Off the top of my head.
Oh, I was thinking Matt, because Matt just hatched them.
I didn't know Matt I knew he hatched them. I didn't know he hatched them. So it was 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so, you know, like you said, but again, oddballs are, it's hard for me to call something an oddball that is being produced by even a handful in the US, where if it's only one person who's ever produced it, still oddball. If most of what you find are wild caught, probably still oddball. Yeah. But those are going to continue to move. And I there's just so many. I mean, when it comes to that kind of piece, that's why it's like, don't look for the next big thing. There's going to be 1,000 medium things. And that's even better, because the big thing is the most expensive thing. And you don't even have. So it's like, you know, you have a $10,000 snake. Fantastic. You know how many people in the hobby can pay for a $10,000 snake? Or even if they can, would want to? You know what I mean? It's just not even, no. You know, it's, you know, could I buy that? Sure. Do I think it makes sense to? Hell no. So $10,000 snakes, I'm not interested in. No, I want that sweet spot bread and butter where, there's going to be 5,000 people who are happy to buy that price point, because you're going to move that a whole lot more than that one $10,000. For example, okay, you do ball pythons as well, right, Joe?
Yep.
Urban camos. Familiar with them?
Yeah.
Familiar with their price point?
At the moment, that's what they originally were.
Well, that was much higher than that originally, but typically you'll see them listed for 4,000 to 6,000, depending on the size, depending on how they look and all that. I've got like 7 of them, something like that. I've sold 2, and both of them had a defect, and so my price point was much lower. And they're cool. People love looking at them. You know, I'll trade off for things. But my point is, when you have something that's super high dollar like that, you have a much smaller market of individuals who want to buy it. And so it's, you know, do much better on that mid range.
Yeah. Cool. I didn't know they actually went for that much, but you told me the story of where the urban camos originated from at Colubridfest. You told me that story, right?
Yeah, it
'Cause
was
yeah.
yeah, local guy I was friends with here. His collection was at my place, and he was going for pewter pieds is what he was wanting that year. And so I had his entire collection while he was on tour, and bred them, hatched out these babies, and he hit 3 pewter pieds, and those were the first ever pewter pieds that had ever been produced. And so, I got to make that phone call and go, okay, so you didn't produce a pewter pied, you actually produced 3. And he's, oh, fantastic. I go, but I'm gonna tell you what, that's not even the best thing in this clutch. I go, man, I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, but you're gonna like it because this thing is different. And it ended up being the first urban camo. So it kind of kicked off all that. So it was pretty cool. So that's my thing. Is it wasn't my animals, anything like that. I don't take any credit for it, but I was the first person to ever get to see an urban camo.
To see them.
So yeah, I'm by myself in my basement going, what the hell is this? So
yeah,
it was cool.
Cool. All right. Let's see. So this one I wanted to ask as well. If you had to steer someone like the right way, someone wanted to start getting into breeding reptiles, and you had to give advice to a new breeder, what is the best way you can, or what's the best advice you could give them to have them be successful? And you could take the word successful in any direction you would like to.
Quite frankly, it would start with questions before I give advice, because giving advice to Joe may be different advice to Mike, different advice to Sharon, different advice to Maggie. I mean, my questions would start with, what do you like? What do you like? What interests you? What reptile interests you? Why does it interest you? Okay. What do you want to accomplish? Are you wanting it just because you want to see things hatch out? Because that's freaking awesome. That's like my favorite part, as far as every year, is just seeing the heads poke out. And, do you want that? Do you want to know what's going to poke out, or do you want to be surprised a little? All that comes into play. Okay. Are you wanting to do this for fun? Are you wanting to break even, pay for your mice? Are you wanting to actually make money doing it? Because that's not necessarily going to determine what animals you're going to go for. But if you're wanting to make money doing it, it's like, okay, now we need to talk about the work then that you're going to have to put into it if you're actually going to want to come out, with a profit at the end. But it starts with that. That's the first thing, is just, why do you want to do this? What is it that you want? Because there's people who get animals from me, and they'll get a pair of this or a pair of that, and they're like, well, we don't have any, intentions of breeding. I go, you should, just once. And it's not because it's, I want them to get addicted, or, or you should make money. No, it's because it's fun. I mean, it's a cool experience. I have Bengal cats. Love my cats. I'm a cat guy. For those who don't know, I'm a big cat guy. So growing up, we always had cats, and periodically we'd have a cat that had kittens. And I remembered how just great that was. I love that. And so when we got our Bengals, we had our male fixed, but I said, we're not going to have the female fixed yet, because I want my kids to get to experience 1 litter of kittens, just to get to have that, because it's so fun. So again, I ask all those questions, and then depending on those answers, then we would kind of guide it. And, once we've narrowed down the species that they want, it's okay. If you're wanting to do this for fun, just do 1. You can add more later if you had a blast, and you feel that you are capable, but just start with the pair. If you're wanting to do this more as breeding out of your basement and as a side project, which is, again, that's probably 80% of the breeders out there fall in that category right there.
Yep.
And that's such a good category. I miss it sometimes. I do. It is such a awesome category because when you're breeding out of your basement or bedroom or whatever it is, your overhead doesn't really exist. It's, your building's paid for, you're living in it.
Yeah.
It's the electricity's covered because, you're watching TV. So the cool thing about that is your expenses are low. And while you can sell these babies and make money, you can give a baby away to your friends and not care. It's
Yep.
because it's that you're not out anything, and that happens so often. And it's really a good feeling. And that's where so much of the camaraderie comes in is, knowing all I have in this is my time, and I'm happy to give my time to my buddy, and that's where you don't see too often anymore where a box arrives and somebody's shipping you a snake and there's 3 extras in there of something you didn't even know was coming. That doesn't happen as much as it used to. And it was very common, and it was fun, to
Yeah.
get that message. Thanks so much for the extra. Yeah, no problem, man. So that's going to be a really good time. And it's also, it will tell you whether or not you want to try to do it bigger or not. Because if you're breeding out of your basement, you have these babies, you're then going to figure out do you like doing shows? Going to them may be fun, but do you like being on the other side of the table?
Right.
And, for me, I love it. I love it because I'm talking to all the, for me, it's a social event. I'm getting to see so many friends because I'm friends with so many vendors now, things like that. And so there's just a lot of pieces that you'll figure out. So start slow, be honest with yourself. That's probably, if I was going to give just one piece of advice, just one, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself about why you're doing it. Be honest with yourself about what you like. Be honest with yourself on what you're good at and what you are not. Because that's so important. If I love snakes, but I hate people. Okay. Then you're going to have to figure out a different segment on how you're going to do this. If you love snakes, you love breeding, you love producing, you, my friend, need to be a wholesaler. You need to link up with someone who can buy all of your babies at a much lower price because you hate people. You don't want to deal with people or the public. Then selling them individually at retail price or, full price, even, whatever price you want to put, that's not going to work for you. Be honest with yourself. If you enjoy the public, you love educating, you love talking, great. Have at it. Go for it. Be a backroom breeder. Before you jump into buying a facility, buying a store, buying anything where you now are going to have a monthly overhead bill, this is where you need to be honest with yourself on, do I know business? Not do I love the animals? We know you love the animals. Do you know business? Because there's a reason why they say pet stores are a terrible business model, because generally they are. And it's unfortunately because a lot of very good-hearted people who loved the animals wanted to do that full time. But the truth is, when you are doing this full time, maybe 10% of your time is the animals. The other 90 is people, it's employees, it's paying bills, it's marketing, it's ordering inventory, it's receiving inventory, it's putting inventory on your shelves, it's everything else. So if you want to do that, you need to love the animals, because if you don't love the animals, you're going to be one of those stores that don't ensure the animals are properly taken care of. So love the animals, but if you're going to do it as a business, you have to love business too.
Yeah.
And I get so excited about it. It's not about money at all. Not at all. I mean, to be quite frank, I walked away from a career where I was set. I mean, I had the type of job that most people would absolutely fall over having. The
Yeah.
perks, the benefits, the pay, the everything. I mean, 5 weeks of vacation a year. I mean, it was just, yeah, I had it all. Walking away from that to what I do now. Now I work 6 days a week, every week. You know, it's simply, I love though all of that. It excites me. You know, it's predicting trends, predicting the market, and then in a way, I'm betting on myself on whether or not I read it right. You know, and that's what we do. So that's kind of invigorating for me. You know, it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
Um, so those are the questions. Is, I mean, that would be it. If it was boiled down to one piece of advice, you have to be honest with yourself on all those areas.
Yeah. And people, just to go with what you're saying about like the real business deal is like, yes, what I do is a business. It's an LLC where I file my taxes, but like my accounting is very simple. I put stuff in an Excel sheet and I could track it very simply. Like you have a whole different segment where there's, it's when you probably have your purchase orders and then inventory and all that stuff, and just figuring all that out, the business side of owning a real retail shop is so different from being a basement breeder,
Mm-hmm.
so
It is,
yeah.
but I will say either one of those, you ensure that you balance your work and your life. You know, if you're breeding it, and that's honestly, that's where it got for me. That's what kind of sparked that Metazotics had to happen. Is as much as I loved the company and the job that I had before, I, like many other people, over the course of my career, I reported to 17 different people, 17 different bosses in over 20 years. Got along fantastic with 16 of them. It was at 17th that I'm like, I've reached my limit. You know, as great as this job is, I'm afraid that I'm going to do something I'm going to regret. So, but it was also, I had young kids and I traveled 4 days a week, for my job. And so I was missing out on a lot. And then when I was home, I had 300 snakes.
Yeah.
So you can imagine where a lot of my time was spent. And I finally looked at what was going on, and it was okay. I either have to significantly cut back on the collection, or I need to go in with both feet.
Yeah.
It's one or the other, because my work-life balance was not where it should be. And that's when, talked to the family and decided that was going to be the direction that we were going to go. We knew it was going to be tight. It's, trust me, I don't pay myself anything near. I'm the lowest paid employee in the building. I mean, and I mean it. I mean, that's just what I do. But even now, I still wrestle with work-life balance, because obviously when you start a company, your first 3 years, it's to the wall constantly. So I still struggle, and I feel like I miss a lot of things, but we're getting better at it. This year was supposed to be the easy year, and then, oh hell, well, let's go ahead and buy a store in January. It's threw that out of the window. But that's it. I still struggle for that, but it's so important, and so I recommend that to anyone: is don't look back, don't do what I'm doing right now, where I look back and think I miss so much, of those kids,
Right.
their lives, their events, their this, and then you're racing to make up for it before, you only have 18 years with them, and then they're gone. So, make the most.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. Well, that wraps up pretty much all of what I wanted to talk about tonight, except, Colubridfest 2025.
Hell yeah.
Just throw that in a little bit in there. You know what? I totally forgot to throw the graphic up at the beginning of the episode, and that was my bad. But yeah, guys, as I say every week, Colubridfest, September 12th to 14th in Fort Wayne, Indiana this year. So you better be there. But yeah, I know obviously the whole planning of this one came around a lot earlier in the year than it did last year. But what's on your mind? What are you looking forward to in terms of this show and how it's all going so far?
This is going to be incredible. Like, we were already stoked for last year. You know, everybody knew that. And I'm going to be honest, and I hope this isn't taken as any kind of cockiness, but I knew it was going to be as good as it was. I knew it. I had full confidence that the only thing I wasn't sure about was how many people were going to walk in the door for the show. But I knew the people who were there were going to see what this was and love it. And so that part, I wasn't surprised on. I really wasn't. Now, the passion that all of those that attended and vended then hit social media with afterwards, that was a surprise. And that was just absolutely, you know, oh, thank you guys. You know, thank you for feeling what I was feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And then you've got, because of all of that, because, you know, we can say all the nice things about it we want to, you know, myself, Zach, and Mickey, but it's the people who go, you, the Zirkles, Eric, you know, all of them going and saying such wonderful things because of how they felt and how you felt. That's really what gained the traction. And because of that, you know, as you know, we moved venues to, you know, all the negatives that we all felt. You know, the parking sucked. We were dealing with a Colts game. We wanted a hotel that we were all at. You know, the load in was a pain. Electricity, paying an extra $150 for electricity. You know, none of that we wanted. So we changed venues, which wiped out all those problems.
I can say this year I got all my shit taken care of ahead of time. So I am fully booked. My hotel's booked. Good. My tables are booked. I'm good. I'm set for the show, and I'm not scrambling for 2 to 4 weeks ahead of time, whatever I did last year.
Got it. Good. That's that a boy. So, you know, with the venue has changed. We got the hotel block. So, you know, we can all hang out because it's got a bar. It's got a patio outside. So hopefully the weather's nice. We have, let's see, we've got the size. I'm going to go out and say I'm expecting this Colubridfest to be 3 times the size that it was last year. And like I talked to Mickey, there are already more vendors signed up for Colubridfest right now than we had at the last Colubridfest. And we're still 6 months out. And most vendors don't sign up until 2 or 3 weeks before. So that's happening. We've got people coming from multiple countries, some vending, some attending. Really? The talks that are lined up sound incredible. So, I mean, it's the only piece that we're going to have to do. And I'm going to make a speech about this whenever we kick it off. If you went to Colubridfest last year, then it's your responsibility as much as it is ours to ensure that everyone who comes for the first time this year leaves there feeling what you felt when you left.
Yep.
Because it wasn't about, let's face it, it wasn't about the damn snakes. You know, it was about the community in that room for that weekend. That's what everybody was talking about. You know, it's very few people actually were talking about a snake they saw. It was that vibe, that feeling.
And speaking to that, like I didn't sell much of anything, but like I didn't care. It was what it was, you know.
Yeah, it was something incredible, and I think it's just going to continue to be. How many other things? I mean, we know there's nothing else like this in the world. I mean, this is it. That, you know, this whole event. And how many others get a 6-page article in Reptiles magazine?
Yeah.
You know, that was just so cool. So cool.
Yeah. Before we end this, just because I see what's going on in the comments right now. So I'm not going to say names. I'm just going to keep it general because it is what it is, and you'll know who and what I'm talking about. I came into this hobby a lot more recently than a lot of other people. I do not have a pre-established relationship with a shipping company. I came in and I picked one that I thought looked good on paper. Sure. So when a new shipping company wants to come in and offer me the same exact service for a lot less money, I'm going to take it because that is a sound business decision for both me and my customers. Because when I get to pay less for shipping, I get to charge my customers less for shipping. And I feel awesome about putting $50 flat rate on my ads compared to what I used to put a range of 65 to 95 for a same size box. And those boxes are, I put $50 flat rate, but a lot of them come out to a lot less at this point. So that's all I'm going to say to that matter. I'm not playing team this, team that. I'm just saying I'm doing what's best for me. And in fact, I had a package delayed this week and they were very responsive and they handled the whole thing for me just as any other shipping company would. With that said, I will continue using it. Case closed on my end. Clint, I know you do something different. I know you have your situation because you've explained it before. So if you want to kind of preface with what goes on with you, you can do that just
no
to answer
problem.
that question.
So first I'll say that I actually I like all of them, all the reptile shipping companies. My original Cock's Eye came from Chad. So Ship Your Reptiles. Have a fantastic relationship with Robin Markland from Redline. You know, they do great things for us. Reptiles Express. I lost her name. Reptiles, you guys don't know who I'm talking about. Was it Reptiles to You? The
fourth one.
Sweet. Well, I don't know.
Is it Debbie?
Debbie. Yes. Thank you. Debbie.
Yeah.
Sweet woman. And she's helped, you know, because I've used them as well. So, and when it comes to Darian, you know, Morph Market, he and I get along very, very well. So I'm on great terms with all of them. And I use, so I'm not going to be specific on the one that I do use on occasion. I'm typically using it for 2-day. And because you got to keep in mind, I ship dry goods as well.
Yep.
So I'll use it for 2-day. My overnights, I actually have my own account through some, and it has nothing to do with reptiles whatsoever. And I mean, quite frankly, my prices beat all of them. I mean, even at the lowest currently offered. And that's not a shot at any of them whatsoever, because I am in no way upset with a company. They exist to be profitable. And what I do enjoy is I love seeing a lot of the shipping companies. Look at how many things they sponsor. Look at how many events that, I mean, take place because their money is being donated, you know, to those events. So there's a reason that there's an upcharge. I mean, they're paying staff. They've got overhead. I know how business works, so it doesn't hurt my feelings. Now, at the same time, and with as many packages as we ship, I want to say last year alone, my shipping bill was close to $30,000, you know, for the entire year. So $15 a package will make a huge difference for me, you know, and that's why I go through the third party that I personally utilize. And another thing that's happening, and I'll put this out there, and we know that there's now the check on Morph Market where you can, like, you're certified with them, where if a buyer gets screwed over by you know, they cover a certain amount of money. I love that. It's cool. But I don't like that it requires you to say that all of your shipping will be done through Morph Market. That I love Morph Market. I love, like I said, I love Darian. I mean, we have a great relationship, but I'm not comfortable with anyone telling me that I have to do anything. That doesn't work for me. It never has. So, so again, that's not a shot. That's not a negative. That's if any company tells me that I have to do something, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
And I don't even think, I think people, I don't know. I think, yes, does it look good to the customers? I guess so. But so do the number of 5-star reviews on their page. So I feel like, in my opinion, even if you don't ship through Morph Market, like, your page can speak for itself. But that's hoping people actually click on it and look at the reviews and stuff like that. I don't know. That wasn't. I feel like people are making that a bigger deal than it should have been. That the green check mark itself. I don't know, and I think I might be wrong. I think Darian said they might be implementing a new way to so that you can get the green check mark without using without using Morph Market shipping. But I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and again, I understand there's two sides to what they were doing there. One, obviously, it builds buyer confidence, by having it.
Yeah.
Makes sense. It also builds their business to ensure that shipping, goes through them. So I understand exactly where it is. It's just not personally something that I don't like that one piece of it. That's it. That one, just part that doesn't sit well with me. So
and I really don't have a dog in the fight, like, in general. Like, I just, like I said, I'm gonna do what's best for me, and at the moment, and I'll say it, at the moment, using Morph Market shipping is best for me. And that just, it is what it is. And you can like it or not like it, but I've had quite a pleasant experience so far. And I had a very expensive snake delayed the other day that I messaged them at 5 a.m. and got a response 10 minutes later. So, things like that, when people say, oh, they don't have the service, I think you need to, like, relax a little bit there. And just agree that all the companies have the same level of service. So
yeah, I've been very pleased with every one of them that I've utilized. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
all right, man. Well, sorry to kind of go off topic there. I just wanted to.
No. I love being able to answer questions in the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
That's one of my favorite parts about this.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give my point of view on the situation. But yeah, so anyway, I think that's a good wrap up for our conversation tonight. Clint, thank you so much for coming on. I think we had a really good discussion. I really hope people take the first, hour to hour and a half there, like, really for heart, and listen to what we had to say there, because I think it's important for especially a lot of new people getting in to kind of hear some of this stuff,
Oh, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Joe. It's always a blast, man.
Of course.
I love any time we get to chat, brother.
Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to throw you off in the backstage and just run this outro real quick.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, man. All right, guys. What another great episode of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. A lot of people in the chat tonight, so I appreciate you all. But yeah, once again, if you enjoyed tonight's podcast, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on the channel. You can hit the notification bell so you know every single time we go live and anytime there's another video uploaded on here. Also, make sure to follow all our social media down below. Also, I forgot to say it at another point, but all of Clint's social media, there's like 4 or 5 links there. It's all down below, so make sure you go check out Clint everywhere you can. Yeah, and that is about it for tonight, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 60 of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. Again, we had on Clint of Metazotics. I hope you all have a fantastic night, and we will see you. Actually, there will be no episode next week. I can tell you all that right now. We'll see you in 2 weeks. So peace out, and we'll see you on the next one.